Hey guys, before we kick off the episode, this is Mike. I just wanted to let everyone know we actually recorded this episode. I don't remember what date exactly, but it was just at the start of the most recent Black Lives Matter protests. We decided to not put out any content over the past couple weeks just out of respect for what's going on there. We talk about how we're going to do the entire Apu Trilogy. Just a heads up, we are still going to do that, but next week we're actually going to be reviewing Spike Lee's newest film, Da 5 Bloods, on Netflix. So there you go. You're all caught up. Enjoy the episode. Just know that the content in it was recorded a little longer ago than normal. All right, take it easy. Hey guys, in this week's Casually Criterion episode, we're going to review Panchali. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and talk about everything we've been up to this week, which includes Chris's little online film festival thing. His favorite stuff so far. I'm going to talk about Goldeneye, and then maybe if there's time, No Country for Old Men. So join us.
Is it the official name, Chris? Chris's online film festival thing?
Yeah, it is done.
He didn't put anything in the show notes, so I figured whatever I said went. I'm officially naming it.
I mean, it's not really. I don't even know that we named it.
The first annual Chris's little film festival thing.
Perfect.
Welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and typically I like to do something funny at the top of the show. I'm not particularly feeling funny right now, so I'm just going to say, how you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing as well as can be expected, I guess. The world is pretty crazy right now. There's lots of chaos going on all over the country, and I just want to let everyone know that, be safe.
Absolutely. It's a good thought. And Justin, how are you doing?
Yeah, about as well as could be, I suppose. It's interesting times for multiple reasons, and I have to say it. I don't necessarily want to beat around the bush, but I'm pro Black Lives Matter, and there's a lot of anti Black Lives Matter things, and it's frustrating, and it's hard to wrap your head around being anti that, and outside of that, I'm good, but it's just a frustrating time. So
yeah, and by the way, if you want to know kind of like where we stand on all this and our general thoughts on everything, we recorded an episode on Do the Right Thing, a Casually Criterion episode, like 2 weeks ago, before all of this kind of went down, and it's feeling pretty relevant now. I
literally haven't stopped thinking about it. Since this stuff started happening, stop thinking about Do the Right Thing, especially the 2 quotes at the end. It's really powerful.
Yeah. Oh, man, I saw this crazy video. I'll tell you guys about it later after we're done recording. But this video I saw trending around on Twitter reminded me a lot of that end of Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
But
it's almost like we talked about it almost 2 weeks too early. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want to review that movie at this time either. But
yeah, right. I'm so glad we kind of got it in while we don't have to review it in this climate.
Yeah. And, maybe at the same time, that means we're not talking from as much direct experience that we would have talking about it now, but so maybe it feels a little dated even 2 weeks later, but I am glad that we got it out.
Yeah, if you listen to that episode, just keep in mind this is 2 weeks before all this stuff happened, so we'd certainly talk about it probably in different terms now. But I still think it was a great conversation that we had about it.
And I'm proud of where we all landed on that conversation.
Yeah, the other thing that's
given what's going on now.
Yeah. The other thing that sticks in my mind is what you said, Mike, about Spike Lee and why Mookie would throw the trash can through the window, and that no black person had ever asked him that, only white people. And I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want a timely conversation by 3 people who are probably not the most equipped to talk about this kind of stuff, then, head on over there and check it out. We try to work our thoughts through it. And obviously, we'll move on with the show now, but just be safe, everyone. And let's get through this, I guess.
Yep.
So, if this is your first time listening, this is a Casually Criterion episode, which is a Criterion Collection-focused episode that we like to do usually every week now during this pandemic while movie theaters are closed. And this is where we review a film from the Criterion Collection that is voted on by the listeners. Now, before we get into our main review, we'll be doing our usual News on the March, where we talk about recent film-related news and things that we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie, it doesn't matter. You can still listen. Then we will move into our Casually Criterion review for Potter Panchali, spine number 789.
Oop, check that spine number again, maybe?
Oh, 783.
There you go.
Spine number 783.
Yeah, so Mike mentioned that the listeners choose our Criterion film every time we do a Casually Criterion episode. And the last one was films from Chris's little indie film festival thing, whatever it is that we called it in the open of the show.
Yeah, I forgot what I coined.
Yeah, but Chris, since it's your little weird film festival thing, what were the results of the poll? Obviously, Pather Panchali won, but give us the results anyways.
Yeah, so Pather Panchali came in at 61%, which is kind of surprising. But Purple Noon came in second with 27.8%, and Valerie...
A far second.
Huh?
A far second.
Yeah, for sure. And Valerie and her Week of Wonders came in third at 11.1%. I'm sure we'll get to Valerie at some point. I have watched it now. It's strange. So
yeah, what's so funny is at the end of the episode where we picked these last week's, we all were like, I don't know who's going to win. These are also like, there's no clear like favorite, or none of these is like a big movie that's just going to blow everything out of the water. And we thought it would be maybe kind of close.
No. Nope.
It's never really close, is it?
It sometimes is. Like
that is true.
Like this is more one-sided or lopsided than some of the ones that we've had that have had like a clear winner anyways, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But all that said, if you want to vote in our polls to help choose our next Criterion film, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. The poll will be on our Twitter, so that's the best place to follow us, but you can follow us on those other accounts as well. On those accounts, you can send us messages if you want to ask us questions, you want us to answer a question about a movie, whatever. You can talk to us on there. You can also email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you've listened to any podcast, you know that they like you to give 5-star iTunes reviews because it helps other people find the show, and we are no different. So if you haven't done that for us yet and you enjoy the show, go on there, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it.
Please and thank you. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much all the opening. Are we ready to move into news on the march?
Why not?
Yes.
All right. All right, Chris, seems like you have been the most busy this week, so why don't you kind of give us a recap of everything you've been up to and what the standouts of your film festival have been?
Yeah, first of all, if anybody's listening, I want to say thanks to everybody that participated. It was actually kind of really interesting. So 3 of us put the film festival together. We had probably 3 other people that joined us for the whole festival that had nothing to do with putting it together. When we put it together, I only thought that it'd be the 3 of us, you know. So it was really special that these other 3 people joined. And then we had Mike from Cinemusts. He joined us for Clio from 5 to 7, and then we also had somebody on Sunday join us for 3 or 4 movies. So it was a lot of fun, and I was really surprised that we had as many people join as we did, because like you said, it's, you know, like Chris's little film festival thing. It wasn't that big of a deal, but we did have people join. It was a lot of fun. We actually set up a Google Hangout in between each episode. We had about a half hour in between each movie. So we would talk about the previous movie, and then we would like introduce the next movie and why we chose it and stuff like that. So it really turned out really fun. It was a lot of fun to talk to all those people. But as for the movies, I will say we had chosen El Topo to open up the...
I recall we gave you a hard time about it last week.
Too hard of a time, maybe.
Yeah, after you guys gave me a hard time about it, I looked into the film because I hadn't seen it. It was actually my choice. And I realized that it was not a good film to open a film festival with. And
not at 4 p.m.
Yeah. So I chose Day for Night.
It's a great movie to open a film festival.
Yeah, you're right, Mike. It was almost the perfect film to open this film festival because a lot of these movies are on Criterion Channel or older films. So the love of film is the perfect way to open a film festival. And then I was really happy with the movie that was chosen to close the film festival, which was Wild Strawberries, which is all about a man looking back on his life. And
it's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
I just rewatched that recently, like not even 2 weeks ago, for the first time in over a decade. And it's good stuff.
Yeah, it's really great. Probably one of my favorites from the festival. I will say, you know, one of the films that we're doing on this is Pather Panchali, and I think that was probably my favorite film of the festival, but it's close. Pather Panchali, we did Wild Strawberries. Clio from 5 to 7, I really loved, or from 6. Yeah, 5 to 7, I'm sorry.
How could you possibly make
Cleo
that mistake? From 6 to what?
Cleo from 12 to...
My Twitter handle for years has been Mike from 5 to 7.
Well, it's on, like, I'm looking at the show notes and I thought it said 6 because I've got my glasses on that aren't prescription strength. So
You have
I
your
look like a
dyslexic
6.
glasses on.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so it was just a lot of fun. Spirit of the Beehive was really great as well. We watched that one. I think Cleo from 5 to 7 was the festival favorite. I think everybody came away liking that one the most. But
Makes me happy I claimed it for my Twitter handle then.
yeah, exactly. We had 3 secret movies, and the first night was the midnight movie, and that was like The Old Dark House. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's definitely like an inspiration for something like the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then we had The Forbidden Zone, which I can't necessarily recommend, but it is certainly unique, and it's written by, the music is written by Denny Elfman, so it's a musical. And then my secret pick was Happy Accidents. And so I was, yeah.
I like that movie. I recommended that on some podcast I guessed it on a while back, and I'm sure no one watched it, so I'm glad that you made people watch it.
I think it was War Starts at Midnight you recommended it on.
That's right, yeah, for the Punch Drunk Club episode. So
Not that I listened.
yeah, why would you? You don't like listening to me talk.
Yeah, loser.
Well, I'm glad that you made people watch that film.
Yeah, and I think I hadn't seen it in a long time, and revisiting it was definitely interesting. But I really enjoyed it. Maybe not quite as much as I did as I remember enjoying it when I first watched it. But it certainly fits into the time period in which I first watched it, like Memento, or movies where like in the last 30 seconds everything fits into place, and you're like reevaluate everything you've seen, which I guess is kind of a spoiler, but
Whoops.
Anyways, I recommend watching it. Yeah, I had a great time. It was really worthwhile. I'm pretty tired, even though all I did was watch movies this weekend. And it was,
Dude, back whenever I was watching 5 movies a day, I would go to bed exhausted.
Yeah. It's tough to pay attention to that many movies, like in a row.
If you would schedule this on a Tuesday through Thursday, I could actually participate.
Yeah, but I couldn't.
Yeah.
Time for Mike's little weird film festival time.
Yeah, I need to start my own little weird film festival thing that takes place for people who only want to watch movies between Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah, I would definitely join you in the evenings. We could certainly do that.
I can give you from 10 to midnight.
Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll just have a film fest that's just evenings for a whole week.
Nice.
No, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, but anyway, this is really cool. Anything else stand out to you?
A couple of movies that I didn't really know much about was that I came away really enjoying. Mary and Max, have you guys ever seen this?
No, but actually, my brother has been trying to get me to watch that movie for like 5 years.
Yeah, it's really good.
He likes it.
Yeah.
It's stop motion animation, I believe, but it's really well done. Philip Seymour Hoffman voices a character in there, and Toni Collette does a older voice of somebody. But yeah, it's really good. It made me cry. And then there's another one that, Justin, I think you would have liked. It's kind of a screwball comedy. It's called The More the Merrier, and it's about a woman who during World War II does her patriotic duty and sublets her house or her apartment to other people. And it's this old gentleman that comes in, and he kind of tries to set her up with somebody else, and it's really good. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Is it like screwball type comedy that's a more modern, or was it made in like the 40s or 50s or something?
Oh, it was made in the 40s and 50s.
Okay, cool.
I think they actually wanted Cary Grant for the romantic lead in the picture, but they got Joel McRae.
Sounds like the 40s, all
yeah,
right.
no, I bet you could say that about most any 40s movie not starring Cary Grant.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, we wanted Cary Grant.
Yeah.
I was glad to see Joel McRae in this. I believe that's his name. The guy from Sullivan's Travel.
Joel McRae's awesome.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, I really enjoyed him in this film. And I don't think he did a ton of comedies. I think most of the stuff he did was westerns and stuff. But it was good to see him in this. I really enjoyed him. He's really charismatic.
Awesome.
Yeah, sounds like a fun time.
It was great. I had a great time.
Well, I work from home, and I work on weekends, so my time was significantly less good. But I have been doing some things.
Awesome.
Yeah, mostly I've just been rewatching stuff. Like right now, I'm currently watching through Community again. So we've done like the first 2 seasons of that. It's still good, still funny, holds up. But really what I want to talk about today was just a couple movies, one of which was on my top 10 of all time, and I haven't seen it in probably like 3 or 4 years. And the other one is actually the only Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie that I like, and that is Goldeneye. Have you guys seen Goldeneye? I know Justin hasn't, because I think he mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, no, I have not.
I've seen it, but it was in the theater, and I have not revisited it since, so I don't really remember.
I've played
much.
the Nintendo 64 game a bunch.
You've basically seen it then.
Well, so yeah, I mean, the Nintendo 64 game was obviously like a really big thing whenever we were, kids.
Yeah.
And I think ever since then, I've always kind of had like a nostalgic place for Goldeneye. And that was actually the first Bond movie that I ever saw as a little kid. Someone whose house I was, with, probably my dad or my grandpa or someone, had rented it. And I was just old enough for that to be my first one, So it's always kind of held a soft spot in my heart. It's pretty corny in like a 90s way, but for the most part, that movie really holds up. Like the one-liners are pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
I think Pierce Brosnan is a good Bond, I think later on the scripts kind of let him down, and even Place's GoldenEye script maybe kind of does too, but it just seems very quaint in 90s. But I don't know. I mean, it ages better than you think it would. I would give it a shot again because it's a fun time. It's a good, like, breezy, fast-moving little adventure movie.
I got you. Well, I will say that the one reason that I haven't watched it yet is because to this point, the only Bond movies I have seen are Sean Connery and Daniel Craig Bond movies. And I know that once I watch GoldenEye, even though like I've heard the other Pierce Brosnan ones are bad, I know I'm just going to have to watch all of them and kind of like complete his Bond movies,
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like
Sure.
I can't. The decision to watch GoldenEye is the decision to watch like the other Pierce Brosnan movies.
Let's put it this way. GoldenEye is fun. You would not have a bad time watching GoldenEye, even if you end up not liking the movie. It's that kind of watch.
Yeah, I feel like I would like it, I think.
I think you would. I think it's enjoyable. I think it's honestly one of the better Bond movies out of the entire Bond oeuvre. Granted, I have missed a lot of the in-between Bonds. Yeah. So I have not by any means seen all of them, but I've seen probably most of them. And I would say that GoldenEye is definitely the best amongst the 90s Bonds for sure.
Awesome.
Okay, so anyway, the other thing that I watched was, I teased earlier, was a movie that was on my top 10 of all time, so I'll keep it brief. That was No Country for Old Men. Ever since we talked about it on that episode, it has not left my mind. And I just want to say this movie is just as good as ever. And man, if I'd watched it again before I made my top 10, it probably would have been like number 5 or 4 instead of number 6. But it's so good. I can't think of much wrong with this movie. It's so moody. It's just this big tone poem on death, basically. Like, I don't know. It's just so interesting and good. And the Coen brothers, like, adaptation skills and their little nuances and their flares with language and casting people that seem like real, authentic human beings. It's just all so good in this movie.
Yeah, I think it's one of those movies, at least it is for me, when I'm done watching, I'm like, is this the best movie I've ever seen? Is it that way? There's probably, I'd guess maybe like 20-ish movies in the world that are like that for me, where every time I watch them, I'm like, yep, maybe the best movie, maybe my favorite. And No Country is definitely one of them.
It's just like when you watch it, there's just not many times in the movie where I'm like, I would have done that differently.
No.
Or I didn't like that delivery. Or I didn't like that choice,
Mm-hmm.
It's just, everything is just quirky enough, just serious enough, and just vague enough to where, like, the movie is not a hard movie to figure out. But if you don't know what you're in for, it's a movie that can leave you cold. But if you watch it again and you really try to get on its wavelength, okay, what is this movie saying? What is the thesis of this movie? Who is my main character? Who am I following? Maybe I should really start listening to Tommy Lee Jones's narration if I really want to comprehend the theme of this movie. So it does just enough heavy lifting, but expects the audience to be able to keep up with it, and expects the audience to go back and really pay attention to it. And the fact that it just doesn't talk down to the audience, but it's still accessible enough to where I feel like the average person can still watch it. They may think it's sad, or they may think it's whatever at the end, but I feel like for a good 3/4 of that movie, anyone could be enthralled.
Yeah, it's great storytelling. Like, you're just enraptured by what's going on. And then I do think you're right. There's like another layer in which you can dive into it if you want, but you don't have to, which is a sign of a great movie, really.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really love about it, everything you guys are saying is totally true. But for a movie that is about what it's about and mostly has the tone that it has, it's really funny too.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a lot of like just like grade A, like perfect comedy in here.
But that's all the Coen brothers. Even at their darkest, I don't think they've ever made a movie that doesn't make me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think so. I just think like this maybe for me is one of like the most like where the comedy is at odds with the rest of the movie. but it still works. You know what I mean? Like the rest of the movie is this like sort of like deranged, scary criminal, albeit with a funny haircut. That's funny. But, you know, there's just a lot of dark stuff and like dark mood and serious suspense, and then to have like the comic relief that it does and pull it off, like I think it's hilarious. The cops are obviously amazing, but even some of the side characters, the hotel clerks, the lady that's I guess in charge of the trailer park where Llewellyn lives.
Yeah.
She's funny.
You know, the guy who sells Llewellyn Moss tents. He wants the kind with the most poles. Even that guy's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is not news to anyone. I just wanted to say this is what I've been watching, and it still stands by, or I still stand by my statement in my top 10 of all time episode where I say that No Country for Old Men might be one of the best filmed movies I have ever seen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The sequence where he goes back to give this man water who is shot and who's got shot and he's dying, and he realizes that the cartel has been there before him, right? And he realizes that they're onto him and he's going to have to like book it. In no other movie have I seen the transition from nighttime to dawn, where the sun is up, happen in one scene so fluidly and so perfectly to where it doesn't feel jarring or weird. You know, like a lot of times if it switches from like nighttime to dawn, like twilight to dawn, you know, like the sun's coming up in a scene, it can be kind of weird and like weirdly paced, and all of a sudden the sun would just kind of be up out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. This movie has like one action sequence that as it's taking place, the sun is rising, and it is paced and filmed and edited and shot so beautifully that I have never seen anything quite like that in any other movie. That transition of time, how it happens so quickly and slowly at the same time, you know, and how the earth is rotating and the sun is moving in the sky. Like, it feels like they just put so much thought into every shot.
Yeah.
It's so good. I cannot stress enough just how much I love this movie.
I'm with you. Every step of the way.
So enough of gushing about that. That's really all I wanted to talk about this week. Does anyone have anything else for news on the march before we go ahead and get into our review?
Yeah, actually, I have a recommendation for, well, both of you, really. But if you're looking for a Coen Brothers film, like, or something very Coen-y, Coen-esque, one of the movies, it was one of the newer movies that we watched this weekend was Blow the Man Down on Amazon.
Oh, yes.
And it has Margot Martindale in it, who is pretty awesome. But it feels similar to Coen Brothers. It's not nearly as good as No Country for Old Men, but it is good. So if you're looking for something that's kind of Coen-esque, check that movie out. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
One of these days, I would actually like to do a Coen Brothers episode where we each go through like and rank our Coen Brothers films. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. I'd like to have an excuse to watch all of their films again.
That would be a long episode. They have more movies than when we did our Tarantino episode. He's got 9, I guess, now.
I know, but they have, dare I say, more exceptional movies.
Oh, I'm with you 1,000%. Like more in terms of quantity, not necessarily, you know.
Yeah. That's what I mean. Like they just have so many movies and a certain percentage of them just happen to be exceptional. That's more exceptional movies than most people make throughout their whole careers.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, thanks for that recommendation, Chris. And I guess this is us moving into our Casually Criterion review for Pather Panchali, spine number 783.
Yes, it is. Let's go. Okay, so as always with our Criterion films, they are typically films that have been out for a long time. This one, Pather Panchali, has been out since 1955, so we will not be doing a spoiler-free section and giving our general thoughts and trying to avoid spoilers because, I don't know, the movie's been out a long time. So, yeah, if you should probably have seen it by now, I guess, although it's a bit more of an obscure movie. But if you haven't seen it, you should pause this podcast right now, go watch it, and then come back and finish up and listen to our thoughts on it.
That is correct. So, Pather Panchali was directed by Satyajit Ray. It stars, and here's where my enunciation will get much worse.
It's okay. You have 3 chances with...
Yeah. Kanu Banerjee, Karuna Banerjee. Oh, look at that, same last name. Same last name, all 3 of them. Subir Banerjee. So there you go. As long as I'm committing to Banerjee.
Yeah, that's what I said. You got 3.
We've got Kanu, Karuna, and Subir.
Yeah, 3 chances. So there you go.
Okay. The IMDb synopsis says, impoverished priest Harihar Rai, dreaming of a better life for himself and his family, leaves his rural Bengal village in search of work.
That is a garbage synopsis.
It is a garbage synopsis. He's the least important character.
Yeah. This sounds like we're going to follow him on this journey to try to find work, right?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, man, we're going to go all over Bengal, and we're going to travel with him, and we're going to see his adventures.
Yeah. No. There's a much more important parent in this film that is not the father. So this would have been a great one for the Mother's Day choice. Too, by the way.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Yeah. So, Justin, it seems like you have a lot of thoughts and a lot of opinions. So why don't you, since this was your movie, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, well, to be clear, I mostly have opinions about other people's hard work and synopsis making, telling them what they did wrong. That's the most value I bring. Yeah, so Pather Panchali was my choice. This is my second time seeing the movie. The first time was... I don't know, maybe about 2 years ago. I was motivated by the Story of Film documentary that's, what is it, like 14 episodes, 15 episodes?
I don't remember how many episodes, but it's fairly long, yes.
Yeah, it used to be on Hulu. I don't know.
It still is.
It's still on Hulu? Okay. If you guys have not seen this, if anyone's listening and hasn't seen it and you're interested in film, go watch the Story of Film. It's like 15 one-hour episodes, and it snakes around the biggest films and some of the biggest things that happen in film history. Like it will touch on them, but it likes to highlight some of the things that are going on during, like, times when that like Citizen Kane is this like extraordinary movie, or that the jazz singer is bringing around sound. It will also go into what is happening in the sound like movie world in other countries and that sort of thing. So it's this great documentary that brought up a lot of films that I never heard of. And if for no other reason, watch it to give yourself like a list of important films, but lesser known important films to watch. And Pather Panchali was one of those films that they mentioned in that series. And I basically blind bought the box set based on the clip that I had seen in there. Not because it was so amazing, but just because I was like, this seems interesting. It seems important. I should just buy this whole box set and watch it. So I finally did watch the box set a couple years ago, and I'm ashamed to say that when I did watch it, I accidentally watched it out of order because I wasn't paying attention. So I watched Pather Panchali first, obviously, and then I watched like the third film second and the second film third. So I got confused because Apu got younger. Well, whatever. I enjoyed the whole trilogy. I thought it was really good and interesting and a fun journey, like a fun trilogy of movies to go through with this Apu character. But Pather Panchali, to me, is like the masterpiece of the 3 films. I think this film is really wonderful. I'll say, kind of going on my first impression when I watched it the first time, is that I was kind of surprised and blown away by the quality of the cinematography in this movie. I didn't expect it to be as good. And part of that is Criterion's restoration of it, I think, is really good, at least compared to the clip they showed in that Story of Film thing. Mm-hmm. But also, one of the things I knew about the film was that it was one of the most, like, the first like important film from India to get like worldwide recognition and to really, get out there and become a big film. And so I guess I expected India to be a little bit younger in its filmmaking and to just not be so polished. And this film, like, I love the cinematography in this film. There's a lot of really great compositions, a lot of really great, like really motivated movements of the camera that really enhance like the mood or like a reading of a character's expression. I love the sort of slice of life films, the everyday life, the coming of age type stuff, and this film like kind of checks all those boxes. You know, I'm reminded a little bit of something like Tokyo Story, which we've reviewed on the show before, and some of the films of Ozu. But what I like about Rai, and this is the only these like 3 films are the only films of Satyajit Rai that I've seen, but based on this film, he lets his camera be a little bit more subjective and a little bit less objective. Like he really gets in there with close-ups, and I think he like, you know, guides us through how everybody's feeling, as opposed to letting us be this sort of like, you know, extra character in the room. Like that the camera's not this extra character, it's telling the story. And I'm just really impressed by the filmmaking, and it's really made me want to dive into some of his other films, which I regretfully haven't done yet. But watching this one again, that kind of lit that fire in me again. I think all these performances are really good. I love these actors. Like they've got such like great eyes and great faces that just like they're captivating me, and I love spending time with this. I loved going back to like visit this family again and to spend time with these characters on the second viewing. It was, you know, they're characters I like and characters I can identify with. And I think, well, I'll actually hold some of that thought, and I'll end my sort of general thoughts here. And I don't know who wants to go next. I guess I'll volunteer. Mike, what do you think of Panchali?
This is a film that I actually, I'd always heard of the Apu Trilogy for a while, right? But I didn't know the individual names of the movies. So I didn't even realize that I was sitting down to watch part 1 of the Apu Trilogy until Apu showed up in the movie. And I was like, oh, I bet I know what this is. So anyways, let me just say, long story short, I really enjoyed this movie quite a bit. I'm with you. The cinematography in this film is really quite the standout, considering how inexperienced Rai was at this point. This is his first film. He was still employed. He didn't even have like a producers behind the film when he started making it. He was literally filming it on the weekends, you know, and kind of coming up with the film organically as it was being filmed. You know, he says that he went out there and within like a weekend of working with the camera and with actors, he learned more than he ever did studying film. I think there's an organic quality to this film that you can kind of feel. Yes, it's polished and there's some gorgeous shots, but there's this energy to it that feels very alive that a lot of young filmmakers have.
You know what I was reminded of when watching this movie, and obviously this film came way later, but the documentary from last year, Honeyland.
Me too.
That has beautiful...
Yes, I was actually going to bring that up.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to step on your toes, I guess.
No, proceed. Go ahead. I agree with you. Good observation.
It's just got great cinematography, like that movie as well, but it is a documentary, and this film obviously isn't a documentary. These are actors, but they have the same sort of rawness, the same energy, the same sort of documentary feeling with excellent like cinematography, where even with like Honeyland, I find myself sometimes asking like, how did they get this shot so precisely while this is a documentary to capture this moment? Like it seems too well planned, you know?
Absolutely. That is such a good recommendation and observation. I had that written down in my notes as I was watching the last half hour of this movie. I was like, God, I want to watch Honeyland again. That movie is so good. Yeah, it's crazy. They're very similar. It's about families living in these crazy conditions and under extreme poverty.
Yeah.
And how do children adapt to that? How do families adapt to that? How do they overcome? How do you grow old in that environment? Yeah, and you know what? Having watched Honeyland last year made me appreciate this movie maybe even more than I would have anyway, because this movie just felt true. Mm-hmm. I know this movie is actually based on a novel of the same name written by someone who I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name. But it's a novel in the Bengali language that is actually quite popular. And of course, Pather Panchali means the little road, Song of the Little Road.
Yeah, that was kind of one thing that I held back on saying in my general thoughts, but the empathy that this movie has, like, I get everybody, I'm with everybody, and the way that it makes me, I don't want to say humanize, but like identify with them and realize that like in 1955 in India, like we're not so different, you know, even though things have come along, you know?
And before we throw it to Chris, I just want to say, for the longest time, I wasn't quite sure what year this movie even took place.
Yeah. It could be many times for a lot of it.
They're living in like if you ever watched The Jungle Book, they're living in like the ruins that like King Louis and his monkeys live in. Like they're living in like rock ruins in the jungle. Mm-hmm. And there's no sign of like modern technology. For the longest time, I was like, this could have taken place 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
Yeah, totally.
The cinematography, the creativeness of the camera, really ahead of its time. And there's some just breathtaking shots in this movie that are like all-timers, you know? Mm-hmm. So I will end it there and we'll talk about it more, but I want to hear Chris's thoughts.
I'm going to kind of reiterate a lot of what you guys have said. What I liked about this movie the most is being able to sink into this unknown world, right? And kind of immerse yourself. It's immersive, you know, like immerse yourself and live with these people for, 2 hours of your life. And you come out and you understand something new, Does that make sense? You come out and you understand all these new things about the world and how... we can be 70 years apart and many miles, but we all have the same human basic needs and wants and desires.
Well, we're all on the same path.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We're all going the same place.
Right. The song of the little path, in fact. Yeah, that makes complete sense. One of the things I find really remarkable, I think this may be up there with Citizen Kane for first-time film, from this director. I kind of feel like all the people that were involved with this, it was their first time. The cinematographer, it was his first movie. The actress that played the mother, it was her first movie. And the first daughter was actually her daughter. So I think we get a lot of like this familial connections because everybody's kind of already related or like they're living there. And I do think this was filmed over like 4 years. So it took a long time. But yeah, I love... In another movie, we wouldn't get the ant. The ant would be very different. But I love the realness. This way that you can sink into this and they're not Hollywooding it up. Does that make sense? It feels real. And you guys were mentioning Honeyland, which I haven't seen, but as a documentary, I imagine you feel similar. It feels like a documentary or something that's real. It's just really remarkable. Especially for a group of people that had never done anything like this before. And I find that really amazing. And have you guys ever seen the episode of Rick and Morty where Morty plays this video game and he lives out this whole entire life and then Rick brings him out of it? This may sound silly, but that's kind of how I felt coming out of this film. I sunk down into this movie and was transported someplace different. And then once it was done, I felt like, I had to like kind of wake up and be like, oh, okay, I get it. I get it now. But does that make sense? It's just so immersive for me. I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it transports you to this time and this place and, end with this family. While I said earlier, it's not like Ozu where you feel like the extra member of the family sitting there, like you still get to know them. And I think one of the things that is kind of infectious is the score, what sounds to me like pretty traditional sort of Indian music. I think really to me there's something about it that entrances me in it, and
it's meditative.
Maybe it's the quality of the music as much as anything else. I don't know.
On the special features, there's like a 2-minute segment of Bill Hader talking about this film, and it did make sense what he says. He compares it to Tree of Life, or a Terrence Malick film, because it's very... I think it's very meditative, and you just kind of... You're going through these people's lives, and I liked it a lot. Yeah,
it definitely... There's a lot of growing up and being torn between, the things around you and the influences on you, which is a similar thing from Tree of Life. That's definitely in here.
Well, this movie, I agree with you. I agree with Bill Hader, I guess. It seems a lot like Tree of Life in its themes, I guess. And you guys mentioned it's a lot like Ozu, or kind of in themes, but not necessarily in execution, which I do agree with. I was reminded a lot of Tokyo Story in this movie, and a little bit of Tree of Life as well. But both of those things are kind of similar in the sense that it seems like an affectionate look at life in various stages. Youth, young adulthood, transitioning into old age, and eventually death.
Yeah.
these things are very much on the mind of the movie, and it's very much showing us life cycles through various characters, right? Like at one point at the beginning of the movie, we follow Auntie for a long time while she goes through her day-to-day and how hard it is to live and how she doesn't get respect and how the children will sneak her goodies whenever the mother doesn't necessarily want her to have goodies, And then later, we'll see the mother going through that very same kind of transition. Another little girl from the neighbors will come up to her and call her auntie and bring her food, much the same way that her daughter brought the other auntie food. You know what I mean? So we're very much constantly reminded of the circle of life, right? This path that we're all heading down to the same place. She's a little girl now, but eventually, if she's lucky, she'll make it to the status of auntie. The mother will make it to the status of auntie. We can all hope to be auntie if we're lucky. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I Durga, however you say the daughter's name.
Durga. I don't know how you say it, but
she doesn't quite make it.
No, she doesn't. Yeah. And that's what yanks the rug out from under me, right? Because I'm expecting this, like, okay, we're showing how generations undergo the same kind of cycles. She's young now, but she'll be auntie. But nope, she wasn't.
Yeah. There's the scene with a friend of hers who I think has been, I don't know what the term is, but a partner's been chosen for her,
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, it's going to happen to you someday. And that feels like one of those setups of like, oh, we're going to see her go from young woman to like becoming okay with being married someday or being forced into being married and having a marriage arranged and like her deal with that. But yeah, it is surprising that she does not make it.
Yeah, it caught me off guard emotionally, and it took me a few minutes to recover.
Yeah.
I was like, surely not. This was my person. This was like the person I was watching the movie for,
Yeah, that's why the rest of it's the Apu Trilogy.
Right? Yeah.
The Apu and Durga Trilogy.
I was kind of confused at the beginning. I was like, this isn't about Apu at all. Like, if anything, we are Apu just watching everything's going on, so yeah, I was confused at the beginning.
I thought it was going to be about like Apu in the same sense that like, have you guys ever seen that movie 20th Century Women?
No.
I don't think so, no.
So what it's about is, did you guys ever heard of the movie Beginners with Ewan McGregor?
Yes.
And Christopher Plummer?
I have seen that one.
Okay, so 20th Century Women is from the same writer-director, but it's about his mother instead of his father. Like, Beginners was about his father, so 20th Century Women, starring Annette Bening and, oh my god, I've forgotten her name. She's, like, awesome. Greta Gerwig. And a couple other people, but basically it's about this teenager that lives with his mom, who is roommates with women of different ages and ethnicities and social groups. And growing up, he kind of gathers a newfound appreciation of women and understanding them and connecting with them on a way that like most teenage boys don't, because they don't get that kind of life experience. I was reminded of that movie a lot during Pather Panchali, because Apu, he's not the main character, but he's very much surrounded by women. His dad is, some dreamer artist that may or may not make it, and he's never there, So he's raised by women. He's raised by his sister and his mother and auntie. I don't know how the rest of the Apu trilogy goes, but I'm interested to see if that upbringing comes into play with his character and the story going forward, because he did grow up in such a unique set of circumstances with such heartbreak that I'm really interested to watch 2 and 3 to see if Apu's character kind of tracks and if I find his journey to be as rewarding or interesting. I don't know, but I'm excited to watch more.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think of when I think of the daughter's death is the scene where the father comes home and he realizes she's dead.
Yeah.
Which I think
that's a good scene.
It's really good. I love the way that plays out. And, it's one of those things, the suspense of the audience knowing something the characters don't, right?
The slow entrance before he even speaks to his wife, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we see so many shots where he walked through the entire frame before he'll cut to another shot. He'll go into the frame, out of the frame, back into the frame
back
again.
Back into the frame through a window or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. The suspense, because we know what he's about to walk into.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, here we go. How is this going to go? Like, is the wife even going to speak to him? I wasn't sure how the marriage was going to be,
I was so mad at that dad. I was just like, you had so many opportunities to fix this house. I was like, that was the point. Like, the mom was always angry, and for good reason. She was always frustrated, I think is probably the better way to put
Yeah,
it.
she lived in the freaking ruins in the middle of the jungle, like King Louis.
And she kept reminding him, and he never did anything. And there's just that moment at the very, right before she dies where like the wind's just blowing and there's cracks in the house. I'm just like, God damn it, you stupid dad. You could have fixed it. You could have done it and you would have saved your daughter. I was so mad.
Yeah.
Well, that was actually going to be a question of mine, which is I was going to say, were you able at the end of the movie to find yourself, I don't want to say empathizing, because I feel like the movie is so good you can't help but empathize. But did you feel for the dad? Do you feel like he went under a journey? Did he learn anything? Was it enough by the end of the movie? Do you care what happens to him next? Or is he just like, fuck this guy? Anything could happen to him and he could die and he would deserve it. Where do you guys fall at the end of the movie? Because I'll lead you real quick with why I'm asking. Is because I found myself, I expected to hate him.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, near the end of it, I don't think I was able to.
No, because you get that he's trying, or at least I get that impression, right? That he's not totally just sitting around and being like, I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do anything. I think he's a little maybe submissive and passive in some ways, because there's like scenes where he's talking about his boss not paying him for 3 months and he's like, he's a good guy, he will pay me, we just got to believe it. But we don't get any scenes at all, contrary to the IMDb synopsis we read earlier of his journey around trying to find work, right? We don't get any of that. So I think
the most we get is like one scene of him trying to write something.
Yeah, that's at home before he leaves, though, on his big journey, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So and
he wasn't even doing very good at that.
Yeah, once he goes, that's it. So I think it's interesting because as an audience, are we supposed to project like how we feel about it onto what he did? Like, do we feel that he was off, like screwing around? Like when he says, I haven't had a chance to write,
I can't think of a scenario where he wouldn't have had a chance to write a single letter in 3 months.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess we don't know exactly like what the postal system. Broken? Yeah, but like what the postal system.
You have to sleep with your hands under your butt, otherwise you can't go to sleep here.
What were you saying, Chris? Because I think I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't know what the postal system is like. Maybe he wrote a couple of letters. We don't know this. I think to your question earlier,
he said he didn't have a chance to write for a few months.
Oh, that's true at the end.
Well, I mean, it's possible. I just don't know what kind of work did he get. Did he go somewhere where he had to work super hard and did he become, some sort of like almost a slave or something, indentured servant or something?
Was he working like 12 hours a day?
Yeah. What are the working conditions like? I assume they're hard. And
yeah, but it's just a letter, man.
Yeah. I agree. I think that's maybe where I find some real fault there, because it's hard to buy that.
Like, no matter how much you work, you can write a letter every day if you want to.
True. It doesn't have to be very long. Although, who knows how much stuff costs? Maybe, every day may be excessive if the fees are more expensive.
Well, sure, not every day.
Yeah. Once a month or something. I had actually come to the conclusion that he was dead or he had run away. And that may be partially why I was so upset with him at the time of the house and him, her death. I thought he had just kind of taken off. I still think, I think there's empathy for him. I just don't think that he did enough because his lack of ambition or trying to do stuff led to his daughter's death. And I think he is responsible, and in that way, I dislike him. Does that make sense? And so that's kind of where I fall on that. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 2 episodes, if the father's in there, or if there's more explanation, or we get to spend time with him. That could be interesting, especially since it's a trilogy. But just this movie by itself, I just don't. I feel bad for him because I think his intentions were good, but ultimately his lack of ambition or trying led to the downfall of his daughter.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's hard to watch and judge, at least for me, over his attitude and his treatment of his wife, of the mother, because I think in modern times watching it, he doesn't seem particularly appreciative a lot of the times, and it's very much like, I think the thing that got me was he was talking to somebody, maybe the auntie, and he was just like, hey, go get me some coals. when like he could have as easily like walked over. I think he even like follows her over there to like get coals for his little, and it was like, is that a hookah? I don't really know, like thing that he's smoking. But I think because we spend so much time with the mother, those sort of actions to me at least have this, you know, unappreciative, not really concerned with what she's doing day to day, you know, and that makes him a little unlikable, I think.
Also, the idea that like she has to borrow from the neighbors and be humiliated on a regular basis and talked down to. So she doesn't even have any peers, right? Like she just has people that kind of look down on her that would otherwise be her peers. And he doesn't seem to really care about that either.
Yeah.
Like he's very much like, yeah, well, we got a little bit of money. We can do one thing at a time. To me, it seems like he expects praise for like that he, as long as he shows up with any money at all, he feels good. Like he did his job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's not necessarily like enough. And he doesn't seem to care what she's going through, what that's doing to her, like in her social circles and how much stress that really puts his wife under.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, her friend's a good person, it seems like. Her friend was going to take care of her, but her friend's frustrated because they're not rich either, right? And she's carrying two families because her husband works and their husband doesn't.
Yeah.
So I really found that journey to be quite interesting, and I sympathized quite a bit, especially for the family that's like their neighbors, their friends. So much frustration, like, your daughter stole the necklace. She didn't steal the necklace? Fine. If you find it, bring it back to us, please. You haven't paid me back my money. What, you need more money? She's a good person. She's trying real hard to help her friend out. But, like, you understand that frustration as well. Because we all have friends like that just can't get their shit together and they can't support themselves.
Yeah.
On that note, can I borrow some money, guys?
Yeah, of course, Chris. Yeah, sure, man.
Of course.
You know, pay me back in 6 weeks or I'm going to guilt trip you pretty regularly.
On the show.
I'll wake up to text messages where I'll just be like, hey, buddy. I almost bought a coffee this morning, but I didn't because you owe me $6. Just kidding. I would never buy coffee.
Yeah, but, you know, at the same time, she also has that same frustration towards the auntie, right? The mother does.
Oh, yeah. Good call. The mooching.
Mm-hmm. So it is a bit of the weird, you know, circle, or, you know, I don't think she necessarily wants to. People. She doesn't enjoy mooching, of course. And
No, I think it kills her. I think she has to swallow her pride every time, and she has to like fight back the shame.
Yeah. And then she turns around. I think she kind of takes it out on the auntie because, like, I think being not in that situation and looking at this movie, like, the auntie, she's pretty old. She can barely stand up straight, you know. So, like, to me, like,
in fact, she cannot stand up straight.
Yeah.
if she made it all the way from her little porch into my kitchen and stole some chilies and came back out with them, I'd be like, yeah.
Good on her.
Yeah. You worked for those, I think.
Right. Something that anyone else that age should not have to do, right? You shouldn't have to, like, think about stealing food from the people to take care of you just so you can eat enough.
Yeah.
That's the reality these people live in. Like, they're that impoverished, you know?
Yeah, and I like that you brought that up, Justin. That was something I hadn't thought of. But, like, if you have limited resources and you're looking at how can I save money, Auntie's the first thing. You can't, like, stop feeding your kids. You know, like, Auntie's the first person you're like, Auntie, you know, like, stop doing these things. You know, like, she deserves all the respect she, you know, like, because she's old and she's done all these things. But as far as resources go, you're like, I'm trying to feed everybody, and you're
and you're the least important.
Yeah. There's definitely that vibe in there. I mean, doesn't at one point the decision is between a shawl for Auntie, or Auntie needs a new shawl because her has a big old hole in it, or do some repairs on the house, and doesn't she end up getting the shawl?
She got the shawl from the other family, I believe, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because the mom was upset and being like, if you're going to beg from other people, then don't stay here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's right. But I do remember this.
Because it's like a little bit of added humiliation, like, which is we can't even take care of our auntie that we've taken in.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I guess I remember them arguing, or her asking for a new shawl, and the mother wasn't too keen on getting her that. But it is like she does kind of fall down the totem pole in terms of importance, and it's pretty heartbreaking, I think. Even though the auntie most of the time, she's actually a pretty entertaining character, in my opinion.
Oh, for sure.
She's got some fun facial expressions and some fun body language that I enjoy watching.
She's great.
Yeah.
You know, we don't typically see these people or see older people, you know, that can't stand up straight, right? In film. And it's so great to see a face like that, and how great she is. She fits in so well into that whole, I don't know, it's just really great. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, her presence kind of adds a weight to the movie, which is like what these people that we're watching now, this is like what they hope to achieve one day. Like this is their ceiling, kind of,
right?
In a certain sense, which is depressing all on its own. Yeah. So one thing that was kind of all over the screen to me, which is this reminded me quite a bit of The Bicycle Thieves.
Okay.
And like Italian neorealism.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, there's nothing contrived about this movie. There's no fancy sets. It's all so indie and so real and so, about the lowest rung on the ladder, of a society. And I appreciate the realness and the rawness of it and the honesty of that kind of film. Did you guys feel that at all throughout the movie, or can you see where I'm coming from on that?
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
It's not something that I actively thought about, but I thought about other movies that make me think about Italian neorealism. Some of them we've mentioned. One we haven't so far is Roma, Alfonso Cuarón's Roma.
I did think about that one.
From a couple years ago. That film certainly has somewhat of a neorealist quality. I think maybe a little bit of like how Fellini came out of the neorealist movement and kind of did his own thing to with Roma anyways. But now that you say it, I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, they were all about natural, no like contrived plots, on location shooting, that sort of thing. I don't know if these were professional actors or not, but a lot of times they stressed the non-actors. It kind of seems... I
think I saw somewhere that they may not have been professional, but this was like... I mean, they may have been professional eventually, but this was very much like everyone's first movie.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of family cast in this, and they're, probably not... They were cast because of their looks and, probably some acting ability, but they're basically non-actors, I think.
The mother had done theater before, and she was like a street performer is what they called it, and she had never done a film and actually had a trepidation about doing film. Like she looked down upon it, but she was convinced to go ahead and do the film by her husband.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah, for sure. Although, from my understanding, it kind of... ruined her life because this was such a giant film. I wouldn't say ruined, but like there's such a giant film there that, she was constantly being recognized, like it changed her life is what I should say.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about too, we've covered the like kind of the oppression and all the stress that happens in this film. But some of my favorite parts of this film are when Apu and his sister escape. Like they go see the train, or the moment in the tree when it's raining, and there's a realism to that as well. Like Apu's just like he's cold and he's shaking, and that's not a thing that he chose for his character. That's because the young boy is actually cold and shaking, and it's pretty great. Those moments of escape from all that oppression and depression, like, is so needed and so welcome when it happens. It's really marvelous. I think the scene that gets called out in the documentary you were talking about, the story of film and Odyssey, is the train sequence in itself. And that sequence is just so great, and it's so beautiful. Like it really deserves to be called out, that sequence there. And then also the just that sequence of rain in the tree is just really beautiful, and it makes you fall in love with both Apu and the sister, and it's really great. Yeah,
there's something about kids being kids that tends to work for me personally in films. But that scene's really great. Like the train with the flowing grass. Like I don't know what kind of plant that is, or kind of grass or wheatgrass that is, but like it's blowing in the wind. It's just almost like this ocean of grass that's just just adds so much dynamism to the scene and to every single shot. It just makes it feel like you're just watching like just pure like cinema perfection, I think, in those scenes. I love like every shot and every second of those. In
one of the videos I watched preparing for this episode, the shot of like the train coming in the background with the smoke and the grass in the foreground and the kids running through the grass, that was supposedly, according to the video I watched, that was the shot that made them want to like enter it into like the official selection and it wasn't even done filming yet, for the country basically. And like that was what also got him like financial backing for the rest of the movie.
Interesting.
It was like the majesty of that shot.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't have the money.
Because at that point, he was still filming on the weekends and stuff, you know?
Right. I don't have the money to bankroll a movie, but I guess if I did and I saw something that awesome at this time, you know, I would be like, yeah, this seems great. You seem like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, you seem like you got an eye for this thing. Here's some more money.
Yeah, you're doing a good job.
The one thing, I don't know how much else you guys have. I did want to talk about the necklace and how that comes back at the end of the movie after the sister's death, and they're packing up and they're moving out of the house, and Apu finds it at the top of the shelves, like in a little bowl surrounded by cobwebs. He finds the necklace that she's, you know, basically swore she didn't steal. And even like when it was just Apu and her talking, she told him she didn't steal it. Or she kind of, I don't know if she says it or she suggests it. Like she kind of dismisses this question. Like, don't ask me that. Come on.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you guys? What does it mean of like him finding that necklace again? Or not again, but for his first time, but the necklace returning to the movie.
You know, I don't know. I thought of this when it was going on. You know, I mean, we're all children. We all have our own lives going on. And how much do you really know a person? But also, equally, how fair is it that any child should have to grow up wanting something that much? Her friends have everything. They get fancy things like necklaces and candy. And, you know, they can afford stuff. And then she lives out in the woods and she covets something so minor that she would lie, she would hide it and kind of hide it for years. But
she was so upset when Apu took the tinfoil from her toy box. Like tinfoil was her toy, you know, like
well, she didn't have anything. She treasured everything that she got.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It made me wonder if I should really be like recontextualizing the sister in any way. I don't think so. I think that's like too much based on that moment. But I did find myself thinking about the fact that she does steal it and like harbors the secret, but it seems like it probably sat in that bowl from the moment she hit it the first time.
Yeah, she never actually played with it.
You never got to take advantage of it. Not necessarily because she died early, but because, you know,
the guilt, or
if what could she do with
get
it?
in trouble? Yeah, like what does she do with it? Why is she stealing it necessarily, or what is she getting out of stealing it? You know, because she can't use it, she can't wear it because they all see each other probably every day.
It's probably not a thing you think of when you're stealing it. You know, you take it and you make a rash decision. And then you're like, well, now I'm down this path, you know, like, and I can't go back. And so,
then there's like the bittersweet context of looking back on it. And so when Apu looks back on this now, he'll be like, oh yeah, she always wanted more, but was never able to get it.
Mm-hmm.
Like she likely died wanting more, you know?
Oh, that's sad.
Well, I mean, that's their existence, right? Like that little girl did want more. She wasn't happy.
But she did take it into her own hands. Like, you know, like she wanted that necklace and so she took it, you know, like.
But that seems more like childish wants. Like that seems more like growing up, right? Like you remember that, like to bring up a movie we've already kind of brought up today, that section of Tree of Life, whenever like the kid goes into the neighbor's house with like the wife that he has a crush on, or the mom of like the next door neighbor, and he like steals her nightgown and feels ashamed.
Yeah. I think he feels ashamed for things he does with the nightgown that we don't see.
Well,
but
maybe, maybe so. But like, it's the idea of doing something when you're a kid that seems like a normal thing to do because you're a little kid. But then like there's shame involved, and then there's like, you can't go back now, right? Like you can never say what you've done, even though it's relatively minor and harmless. But there's a certain amount of shame that comes with it. That's just like I think kids have to experience to really reckon with who they are and right and wrong.
Do you think Apu would feel that shame for her? Like, would he feel embarrassed? Would he feel, you know, like,
doesn't he throw it?
Yeah, he covers for her. He makes sure that it's never found.
Yeah,
that's the way I read it. It was like he's protecting his sister even at the end.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Even from like her own memory.
Yeah, that part for sure. I was just wondering like what maybe his like initial, like, oh wow, she stole it. But I don't know. I don't know that I ever like get enough that he thinks that much of his sister, like that would like disappoint him in any way to find that out.
I don't think it disappoints him. I think it's just one of those coming of age things where you realize that people are flawed.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of coming of age.
Even people that you idolize.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of coming of age for little Apu.
Oh, yes.
I feel for him.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see where his adventures go next.
Yeah. And
probably more excited than I was before this conversation started.
Yeah, and surprise, surprise, I guess. We've been talking about this, and I've been sitting here thinking, maybe we should just cover the rest of these movies.
I think that's a good idea.
We've talked about it so much, I've wanted to be like, maybe we should, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation. And I feel like if I'm sitting here thinking that, other people listening it will be like, why don't they just cover all 3 of these movies if they want to watch them so bad?
Yeah, so let's do it. So there you have it, listener. That's the plans for the next 2 weeks.
Yes. And Mike, since you're amazing at pronunciation, what are those other 2 movies called?
Oh, man. Let me look them up because I don't know. Because like I said, I didn't even know this movie was part of the Apu Trilogy until Apu showed up. So 1 second. All right. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So the next 2 films are, oh my gosh, Aparajito and Apur Sansar.
Yes. Importantly,
that's my best shot.
Yeah, you got it right. And importantly, in that order, Aparajito first, not third.
Yeah.
Well, second, not third. Like when I watched it, and
look how Apu grows.
I know. You see it right here on the Criterion website. His progression. Yeah, I am super excited. Like, I've seen these movies before, but like I said before, I watched them out of order, and I think it probably diminished my appreciation of both movies. So I'm excited to revisit them in order, and then talk about them. Talking about Panchali has been super fun.
Yeah, and I think this is the best way to do this trilogy. We've had these conversations in the past. There's like the box sets and stuff, but who knows when we'd get back to doing any of the Apu Trilogy. There's so many Criterion films. It feels right to do all 3 of them in a row, especially now that we have the pandemic going on.
Yeah, and especially, we tend to choose our Criterion polls on a theme or whatever, and it's like, what theme is going to come up when we, like, one of us is like, oh, Aparajito, the next Apu movie.
It's tough to do.
It's such an isolated little film, but Panchali can kind of come up because it's the first film. It's Satyajit Rai's first film, and that can kind of come up organically, right? But the second and third entries into the Apu Trilogy, harder to get to. So I like this idea.
Yeah,
awesome. We hope you, the listener, does as well.
Yeah, there's always news on the march if you don't.
Yeah. All right, is that our review of Panchali?
Yeah, I think so. Do we want to give a 5-star rating just because we all seem to really like it a lot, and I guess I just would like some sort of gauge, I think, on what that means.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So out of 5, I'm sitting at a solid 4. Time might bring it up to a 4.5 or 5, but my gut tells me 4 right now because although I ended up loving the movie, there were sections in the first 40 minutes or so where I did find it dragged a little bit. I don't know if it would drag me the second time now that it's won me over and I'm like into it.
Yeah.
But initially, I wasn't in love with it until into the movie, until like act 2 or 3. So I'll go with 4, but with the caveat that time could easily boost this up further.
Yeah, I'll say that on my second viewing, I felt that this movie really moves and really flies by and doesn't drag at all. So, and I think I might have felt a little bit of that the first time, just not knowing what I was in for at all and getting acclimated to the movie. Right.
I wasn't even sure who my main character was for the first 30 minutes or if there was a main character. Yeah. So I was just kind of figuring it out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but I'm at 4.5 stars actually. So, about where you may be, on a second viewing.
Yeah, I'm at 5 stars. I really love this film and enjoyed my time with them. I think it's really great. I can't wait to watch more of these and go back and watch it again. Like, there's so many good. I was just looking on the Criterion channel now. There's a lot of really great special features and stuff on these 3 films. So that should be interesting.
Nice. Well, all right. Is that it for this episode? Does anybody have anything else?
That does it for me.
And me too.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much for listening. And of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right. Stay tuned to this channel. As we discussed earlier, the next film that we will be discussing is the second film in the Apu Trilogy entitled Aparajito.
Yes.
Aparajito.
Yeah, and if you want to send us anything to have us discuss about any of the Apu Trilogy movies, I guess specifically Aparajito next time, but if you want us to answer something about Pather Panchali, we can do that. But you can send those to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast or casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening to us. It really means a lot during these trying times. And we will see you next time. Be safe out there, guys, really.
See you later.
Be safe. Have a good one.